welcome, Musk players. I'm Mark Santamartino, and this is your weekly dose of all things gaming, film, entertainment, frankly, anything we want to talk about. We're up to episode 22 of our show, and this one is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be stripped back. It's borderline what you would call an acoustic set for us, Jules, because
it's very intimate.
It's intimate.
We're pretty close.
We've lost our third member in the threesome that is Must Play, being Ryan Mason. He was unavailable this week, but we still wanted to bring you a show, so Jules and I decided we were going to do it together. Jules, thank you so much for being here.
It's good to be here, and we do have quite a bit to talk about.
We do.
So even though Meso isn't available to be here, we thought we should still talk about everything we have to say.
It's been a big week, and no bigger way to kick it off than the fact that Red Dead Redemption...
Red Dude Online.
Red Dead Redemption 2's online beta has dropped this week. Now, it's been rolled out in the most bizarre way possible. Wednesday, people that got the Ultimate Edition were able to test it out for the first time. Then day one, players got to try it out for the second time. Then there was like a weird 3-day period, and by the time this comes out, pretty much everyone will be able to jump online and see what this game has to offer, Jules. Now, GTA Online was huge, so we expected something big from Rockstar. Very early days, but your initial feels, have they delivered?
It's too soon to tell. I think if they've delivered. Once it rolls out in full, I think we'll get a much better idea. But there seems to be some good feedback coming from it, especially the fact that there's a story mode in online, which is, as if there wasn't enough storyline in Red Dead already.
Yes, we're about halfway through the actual game. We didn't need any more now, but that's fine.
No, it is the last thing on our mind, starting up an online game. I'll be honest, I never got into GTA Online. And from looking at it, it's not... It's very different to GTA.
Yes, it certainly is. The games are vastly different. So let's run through what we get in this online game. Keep in mind, it's just a beta, and at this stage, it really does look like they're just planting the seeds for what's going to be a consistently updating online world. So there is a completely separate single-player story mode, as you alluded to, which actually starts in the eastern part of the map. You start off by creating your own character and effectively not breaking out of a prison, but you start in the prison area. From there, you have the option of hooking up with friends online. You can create like a temporary posse or even a permanent posse or a persistent posse, as they call it, where you get up to 7 people in a group to run around, complete side missions, complete main story missions, or just fight against others that you happen to come across in this open world. And I think there's 5 modes, Jules. Now, I've brought them up because one of them, but the one we want to focus on, is sort of Red Dead Redemption 2's own take on Battle Royale.
Well, it seems like everyone's got to do it.
Yeah.
Everyone's bringing out their own Battle Royale style game, so why not have Red Dead do it?
Now, Red Dead is seemingly a little bit different. It's like you start with only bows and arrows, as well as...
throwing knives.
A handful of throwing knives. Yeah, so the mode itself is called Make It Count, and it is a similar last man standing type of mode. I haven't tried this one out for myself just yet because the update is downloading as we speak. I think it's another 5.6 gig just to add on to the 100 and whatever it already is taken up on the hard drive. Yeah. And it does have that gradually shrinking player area. On top of that, in terms of the versus modes, you'll also have the classic deathmatch with the shootout. There's Most Wanted for anyone who wants to become, the baddest cowboy in the West. You got to do all sorts of bad deeds to hit that Most Wanted rank. Hostile territory is effectively a capture the flag, and then there's also a name your weapon category in the versus modes, where basically if you kill someone with a weak weapon or the most obscure way, you get the most points. So it is quite varied, at least initially, considering there's so much single player story based content.
Well, it sounds good. It's definitely going to be a completely different type of gameplay to other battle royale games we've seen.
Yeah,
because honestly the gameplay mechanics in Red Dead don't even compare to Call of Duties and Fortnite.
Which Meso did rank as his favourite battle royale of all time. He said, this is what's going to stop me playing PUBG. Red Dead is much slower, and I'm most excited to see how that plays out in an online space, because I like frantic, fast fun. I want to jump in and out of an online game, have a 5-minute match, and then if I'm doing poorly, have the ability to reset. Now, Red Dead Redemption 2 is not that kind of game.
Not when you're running around with a posse. Anyway.
No, it's a slow burn, and I think that might be a bit frustrating if you do have team members that want to go off and do their own thing, or potentially are just distracted or not necessarily paying attention. So we'll see how it plays out. One thing I did want to mention is the economy system in this, because we know dollars played a huge role in GTA Online. And in Red Dead Redemption 2, it's all about gold. Basically, by completing missions, you earn gold nuggets. 100 gold nuggets makes a gold bar, and you effectively use that to buy things and unlock things early in the game. This, in my opinion, opens the door for microtransactions.
Oh, definitely. And it's no surprise. And given how much money Rockstar are dragging through from GTA Online, that's where they're probably making the majority of their money. I can imagine that this opens up a whole new door for them.
Yes. Don't think it'll be as popular as Grand Theft Auto Online. I understand that obviously Red Dead Redemption 2 has sold really, really well at this stage, but something about the world just does not scream.
No. When GTA, you get in a car, you drive really, really fast from one side of the city to the other. You're just restricted to horses in this.
Depends what they allow you to do. I suppose if they do bring in bank robberies or something in future where you effectively create your own stronghold, very similar to what people were doing in Metal Gear Solid 5, and you had to protect that and protect your stash and, almost like a Clash of Clans, it would be cool.
This online mode is essentially Fallout 76. You find it, you can build your own camps and go off and do separate missions and that sort of thing online. But
while we're on the topic of Fallout 76, should we just touch on the fact that they've apologised? All the Fallout fans out there who've been complaining about the service for the online game Fallout 76. Is it Activision Blizzard who produces Fallout? Look that one up for me, would you? Bethesda. It's Bethesda. They've come out and basically said, we are so sorry that we launched the game in this way. There's going to be a huge patch coming next week. So for any Fallout fans who are unhappy with the game they have initially purchased,
This seems to be a recurring thing.
Yeah. It's one of my biggest gripes. I hate it with modern video games. And it's one of the reasons why I love my Switch so much. It's because there is very few titles, or at least first-party titles, that need a giant update day one.
And I find with Nintendo as well, they're not afraid to push back a release date either.
No. So. Miyamoto says a delayed game is eventually good, a bad game is bad forever. And he's right. Let's talk about a film that is permanently good. I mean, it was so good when it first came out, and Disney's trying something that they've been doing with their other films, similar to Beauty and the Beast, as well as The Jungle Book. The Lion King has... Well, we've known for a while that it's going to be coming out in a live-action format. It's really just a fancy CGI format. Yep. And we got our first trailer late last week, Jules.
Beautiful.
It does.
I mean, we didn't see any characters speaking.
Yes.
Or anything like that. But what we did see, it looks beautiful. It looks really well made. And surprisingly, I'm really keen for it. I was a bit unsure when with all CGI remakes, like Aladdin, for example. It's always something that I'm a bit nervous about, but this one looks so good.
It's funny how they even classify it as live action, because at this, I mean, there's no human characters in The Lion King.
Really good CGI that looks like real life.
But I mean, obviously, this trailer started with the most iconic scene in the film for me, which is both the opening and Mufasa's death. You get an insight into how they're going to be handling that stampede of buffaloes in the context of that amazing opening cinematic. It looks like it's really well produced. We see Rafiki, we see Simba, we don't see Zazu, and we do get an indication of the cast that's going to be in it as well, with Donald Glover, Beyonce, I think John Oliver's in it as well, and James Earl Jones is coming back.
Oh, thank God.
We needed him.
He's only going to be in the first part, but
we'll take it. That's fine. And I think on the whole, where The Lion King, this live action, and I say that in quotes, is going to fall or do really well or fall flat is in how they are able to have the voice come out of these super realistic looking animals, because you don't want it to end up like the cats and dogs films where you look at it and it just looks ridiculous,
something to compare it to will probably be the recent Jungle Book movie.
And don't get me wrong, I think they've done a good job with that, but I'm just interested to see where this goes and how they do it for this film, which I think is beloved by pretty much everyone aged between 15 and 35. It struck such a chord with a massive generation. Speaking of games which have been... Mosquito. Speaking of some much-loved things, The Legend of Zelda is one of everyone's favourite video game franchises, and it hit new heights with Breath of the Wild last year, winning Game of the Year awards left, right and centre. One thing that Nintendo has been doing a lot, because these games take so long to develop, is re-releasing their old content in terms of HD remakes. We had... First, we had the Wind Waker HD on the Wii U. Then we had Twilight Princess on the Switch. and I think that might have been on the Wii U as well. I'll double check that. And now we've got a little bit of an inkling that Skyward Sword, which was long rumoured, the Wii game, which is a little bit divisive, could be coming to the Switch as well. The series producer Eiji Aonuma has responded to fans who were at a concert for the video game franchise in Japan. And he specifically said, and this is a translation, "We know what you're thinking, Skyward Sword on Switch, right?" And of course it got a massive round of applause from the crowd. We're all just massive Nintendo fanboys that go to those things. But I suppose my question to you, Jules, is, I mean, would Skyward Sword work on the Switch?
Yep.
Particularly after, would Zelda work? And would you want to go back to old school Zelda after the revolution that's Breath of the Wild?
Yes, I would.
Why?
Because they're such great games.
All right. Well,
give us credit. Before Breath of the Wild, there was Zelda games that were blowing us away. And, I mean, Skyward Sword isn't up there on my list as best Zelda game, but it was really enjoyable. I love Twilight Princess, and I don't think that Twilight Princess is actually on the Switch yet. There was rumoured to be.
Okay, well, it definitely came out on the
Switch. I will play it.
I think it might be. Anyway, we'll double check that one. I think it's definitely on the Wii U. I think the thing that stands out to me with Skyward Sword potentially coming to the Switch, it is the fact that it is simply the most linear Zelda title, or 3D Zelda title in existence. And it came right before Breath of the Wild. In fact, the complaints about it being so linear and so constricted in its three sort of main areas, which evolved over time, is the reason why they went for such a big open world, because they wanted to give fans what they wanted. And I just think it's fascinating that this is the game that they're going to follow up after Breath of the Wild, or follow up Breath of the Wild with. And don't get me wrong, I love Skyward Sword, but it is a game that has its problems. I mean, fighting the imprisoned so many times was not necessarily fun. A lot of people didn't like the motion controls. I personally loved the motion controls, and I had no issues with them whatsoever, and it made it such a better game for me, thinking that every enemy was a puzzle that you had to make sure that you hit in the right direction. But I know some people had an issue with it, and given there's no sensor bar on the Switch, calibrating the Joy-Con, it'll be interesting to know whether or not it's able to hold up to that one-to-one representation. I don't know. Do you have any concerns about it, or you just seem happy to give it a go?
I'm just happy to give it a go. To be honest, like, I can't. They wouldn't put it out if it wasn't going to work.
That's true. They would do something to get around it.
Yes.
Although it would be cool to feel the HD rumble in these little things every time you're controlling the beetle or something else. I think it could really work, and I did love that game. It has some of the best boss fights, by the way, in the linear Zelda series, and I think it would be great to go back to the standard, forest, temple, ice, and all that sort of stuff after Breath of the Wild. While we're on the topic of rumoured video games, Blizzard,
They've had a rough month.
They've had a rough month ever since they announced that, their next big Diablo game was going to be a mobile title. The PR for that company has been pretty poor. Yeah. But we have got a new rumour about Diablo 4, Jules.
Well, thankfully, they're rumoured to be making Diablo 4.
Woo!
Because after that big debacle at the BlizzCon, where they didn't say if it was coming or not, it was a bit of a disaster, to be honest. So Diablo 4 could be coming. Fingers crossed it is. There's a code name going around called Fenris.
Mm-hmm. One of the worst code names I've ever heard. Doesn't necessarily...
hopefully it doesn't reflect on the game itself. So.
You wonder how they choose a code name. Because, Microsoft's next Xbox is the Scarlet. You always got really weird ones for the I think the GameCube was the Dolphin, or maybe that was the Wii, or I think the Wii was Project Cafe. Who knows how they come up with these things? But
fun fact, you may know this, but now movies, when they get their reels of their movies in before they come out, they're always codenamed something different. So that doesn't say the actual title of the movie on the tape.
But for whose benefit?
So people that would attempt to steal the movie from the cinema wouldn't know what they're getting.
No, fair enough. So, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
we obviously do this podcast in Melbourne, Australia, and Australian news in the world of video games is something we care near and dear about. And we've actually spoken about this topic a fair few times in regards to how it's being handled in Europe, and that is loot boxes.
Yeah.
Like them or love them or hate them. It's probably the latter.
I don't know anyone who likes them or loves them.
No, it's definitely a hated thing. Regardless, governments around the world are trying to crack down on loot boxes, basically under the impression that they can lead to in their eyes,
gambling.
It's a form of gambling. You're paying money for a chance at something. you get a 1 in 10 go. A review has been conducted by the Australian Senate, and they have recommended, after this review process, that there be an inquiry into loot boxes in Australian video games. I will just read you a short section of this recommendation. The review should commission further research into the potential for gambling-related harms to be experienced as a result of interaction with loot boxes, to identify any regulatory or policy gaps which may exist in Australia's regulatory frameworks, examine the adequacy of the classification scheme as it relates to video games containing loot boxes, consider if existing customer protection frameworks adequately address issues unique to loot boxes, and ensure that Australia's approach to this issue is consistent with international counterparts. Now that seemed really boring, but basically what they're saying is we are so woefully behind when it comes to any form of regulation around loot boxes that they are going to be, one, looking internationally to see what those different countries in Europe are going to be doing.
Well, it only seems to be European countries that are looking into it at the moment, but I'm all for us taking that on board, and I hope there is some sort of regulation when it comes to loot boxes and microtransactions.
Well, you don't want to get angry over something as small as a loot box, Jules.
Oh,
and you don't want to get angry over anything in the world of video games when it is supposed to be our fun. This is our fun pastime.
It's just, video games are meant to help you relax.
Yeah, they're meant to help you relax. Now, that has not happened for this gentleman we wanted to highlight today. We found this video pop up online during the week and just thought it was so funny because we have EB Games here in Australia. Overseas, it's commonly known as GameStop. And their return policy is one of the best things about it and probably some of the worst things about it. If you have a game that you've just purchased and you hate it for one reason or another, within 7 days, you can pretty much get a full refund or a return, at least trade it in for another game. And of course, they also do buyback second-hand games, although you got a really bad deal the other day.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about it.
No, I want to talk about it.
I took back Dishonored 2.
Yep.
And they were going to give me about $4.50 trade-in value, but it was a bit dusty, the disc, so they had to take like $1 something off that for a cleaning fee. So I got $3.60 for Dishonored 2. Thank you, EB Games.
That's a huge...
And I bet that they sold it for like $35, $40.
I'm sure they did. I'm sure they... Well, they've got to make their money somehow.
Anyway, and people probably would say, well, why'd you trade it in? And my answer to that is, I just don't want to play the game anymore.
Fair
I've
enough.
finished it and I can get my money back.
I think if they offered me that amount of money, I would have had the reaction that this gentleman had clearly told by the GameStop staffer that he wasn't going to be accepting this game return. You just see he absolutely cracks.
Yeah, he's not a happy boy.
Yeah, he pulls out his headphones, he throws down a stand, he knocks over another, all as just with every step as he takes towards the front door. I think he even picks up the game he was going to trade in off the counter on his way out the door, just knocking over different stands as he goes, causing a bit of damage along the way, I'm sure.
What do you do in that situation?
I have no idea. As a GameStop staff, all you can do is stand there and hope that he doesn't hit
we
you.
understand you're frustrated. Luckily, I didn't push over anything while I was getting my $3.60 worth of Dishonored 2.
Yeah, I'm sure the staff have really enjoyed that too. It sucks working in retail. We understand. I worked in retail. Anyway, talking about my favourite thing now, we're turning our attention to it. It's game announcements. And Jules, at the end of next week, we are apparently going to know at least about another 10 brand new titles. When? It's at the Game Awards, which are going to be held on December 6th. We don't know what these games are, but Jeff Keighley, the journalist, the video game presenter behind the Game Awards, says it's going to be bigger and better than it was last year when he had the orchestra on board. There were so many different things announced last year, including Bayonetta 3, which I'm really excited about. We got new footage for Death Stranding, Soul Calibur 6. We saw stuff for A Way Out, which was one of those really cool games. We got the DLC announcement for Breath of the Wild, and we also got stuff for Fortnite and plenty of other games, including Metro Exodus and PUBG. So, I mean, they're big names. Yeah. I mean, tell me, what's on this wish list?
All right, well, the obvious one that everyone's been asking for a century is Half-Life 3.
Yeah. I don't think, Valve would do that themselves. Valve aren't coming out at the Game Awards.
Yeah, well, how are they going to come out?
I don't know.
Steam News when it pops up.
Yeah, probably not the biggest platform.
No, and the other major one on my list would be in general, a Star Wars game that's actually good.
Mate, you had that. That was 1313. They cancelled it.
Yeah, no, I didn't have that. I got to see gameplay of that. I got to be teased with it, but I didn't get it.
No. Instead, we've got Battlefront.
I would like to see a Knights of the Old Republic 3.
Ooh.
That's not an online game.
So not the Fallout 76 of Star Wars?
No. Well, I mean, they do have like their own MMORPG, which it's still going, and I guess some people must be playing it, but I admittedly did try and play it, but it was too repetitive.
What platform does it come out on? Is it a PlayStation game or is it a PC?
It's a PC first, and then it comes out on console after that.
All right, is that a prediction or is it?
That's well, if they were to announce that, then yes.
All right. I personally, honestly, I would be so happy even for just a remake of Banjo-Kazooie. Yeah. I don't want a new game. I don't want a Nuts and Bolts 2. But I think it's worked for Crash. It's worked for Spyro. Just give us some HD Banjo and I'll be over the moon. Package it with Tui, even better. And look...
That's such a good idea.
If I could get anything like Pikmin 4 or... Because I love the original... I love Pikmin games. And we know the fourth one has been in development for quite some time. Maybe a new Kid Icarus game. I know next year is going to be jam-packed for Nintendo. But given we don't know Metroid's going to come out, definitely next year, I reckon we might actually see a trailer for that game as well. Okay. Metroid Prime 4. But of course, it is all about the Game Awards. That's what we're leading into. Next week, we're going to have the official or one of the official awards be named. So I thought it might be fun just to go through some of the big names and the big games of this year because we've been spoiled to some extent, Jules.
It's been a pretty decent year.
Yeah.
And there's still more to come.
Yes, there is. I mean, Smash Brothers is
that's probably the only one to come.
But look, there have been some really great games this year, and not just great games, but really varied games. Yeah. I mean, is there anyone for you in particular that stands out? I think I know what you're going to say, but I mean, anything maybe other than Spider-Man?
Anything other than Spider-Man? Probably not.
Probably not.
No, Red Dead Redemption's it's up there. I've still got a long way to go in this game, but it has blown me away with what it is. But yeah, Spider-Man is definitely my top game this year.
See, the more I play Red Dead Redemption, the less impressed I am with it.
I'm kind of with you there.
Yeah.
Because there's just so much more to take on. I mean, at the point where I am at the moment, I honestly have not picked up the game all week. But at the point where I'm at, I'm pretty satisfied with how it's going.
Yeah. So. Look, I personally still don't like the controls. And the slow burn gets to me now. When I'm 40 hours into a game and I acknowledge the fact I've got 30 more, I'm just like, yeah, we can pick this up. But either way, I thought just as a bit of a refresher, we might go through some of the top Metacritic scores just to remind ourselves what the games were that came out this year, which were quite big. And obviously, Red Dead Redemption 2 is sitting at the top of the list. God of War, PlayStation 4.
Still haven't got around to playing it.
I rated it a must-play. That review is up on our website. I personally think God of War is going to be a tough one to beat. I love Spider-Man, I love the freedom, but there is what they were able to do with that game in terms of camera movement, storytelling, showing a different side to Kratos, keeping that brutality, but really changing that franchise up from what it was into something that is this beautiful one-shot right from the start. If it's not Game of the Year, I think it almost certainly is PlayStation's Game of the Year.
Or Fortnite will take that title.
No.
I would not be surprised if Fortnite took out the title.
We'll see. We also have... Well, I want to get into the indie games in a sec, but some of the other big names this year. Forza Horizon 4. This is one that I regularly bag because I thought it was just... Even though it's seemingly an amazing game and that it plays so well and it looks so beautiful, by all accounts, it sounds as though seasons were the biggest thing in this game, and I think in 2018 that's a bit of a laugh. We also had... Shadow of the Colossus come out. I completely forgot about that game. Nier Automata, Become as Gods, the Xbox One edition. Monster Hunter World was a really big one to start the year on. Yeah, I know that's not your type of game, but
I don't think that's going to be up there.
You don't think so?
No, Hollow Knight.
That's what I wanted to. I mean, Hollow Knight came out a long time. It came out on the Switch for the first time, but this year the Switch had some really big... In fact, there's just been great indie games in general with Owlboy, Dead Cells. I know you were a big fan of Dead Cells. Yeah. Guacamelee 2 I haven't got around to, but I know it's reviewing very, very well. But the one I really wanted to focus on, and this one probably might be my game of the year, is Celeste.
Oh, right.
Okay. Played it on the Switch. Wasn't expecting a hell of a lot from it. I just saw, the IGN review, as probably a lot of people did, that it got a 10. and I thought, I've got to give this game a go. And for what it's able to do, not only in terms of the accuracy of its platforming, but the way your character develops in terms of skills and internally, because the game really does factor around a battle with depression. That is why you're climbing this mountain. It is one giant metaphor. It hit me like I wasn't expecting. So that one would be very, very high up there for me.
I'll have to put it on my list. If you've rated it that highly.
I'm saying, if there is a single game that I would actually recommend you to buy this year, I mean, I love indie games like Overcooked, and there was a new, if I'm not mistaken, a new Steam World Dig. I'm halfway through Undertale at the moment, but I've got to say, Celeste. The buck stops with Celeste.
Well, you recommended Hollow Knight to me.
Yep.
And I have been loving that game.
Yeah, it's good. Celeste is a different kind of game. But I actually want to give a bit of a shout out look, I don't think the Switch has had a necessarily strong year. I think a lot of what we got were the party games, like Mario Party. We also got Mario Tennis Aces, which was...
It's still a relatively new console.
It is, and the first year was fantastic.
I mean, how many years has the PlayStation 4 been out? And we're only getting games like Spider-Man and God of War.
Now, that's a good point.
So give it time. I reckon we're going to get some beauties from them.
And next year is going to be huge, because we know we've got the brand new Pokemon coming, maybe Metroid. We know Fire Emblem's coming. There's going to be the Yoshi game as well. There's plenty on its way. But I wanted to give a shout out to a third-party game, which I thought what they did with it in terms of art style, gameplay shake-up, everything was just so great. I was captivated from the beginning. And it is a 70-plus hour game, which is Octopath Traveler, the game with the stupidest name and one of the worst icons on the Switch because it's so bland. I hate it. Nintendo, if you can change it, please do. Square Enix, you can do this. But I really, really loved what that was, given it was a brand new IP, and I wasn't expecting a hell of a lot from it again. It blew me away with its visual style and its storytelling, and it is inherently charming in the way it's able to...
And a very literal game title too.
Yes, the most literal that you can get. Let us know what you would potentially vote for in terms of Game of the Year. I mean, we're going to have to eventually announce what our own game is, Jules. We've sort of given you a bit of a taste as to what it could be now. But let us know in the comments below, or flick us an email at mustplay.net.au, or obviously comment on Facebook, Twitter, or otherwise, Instagram. And just to wrap up the week, Jules, we love free games, don't we?
I love free games.
It's coming up to December, and particularly given it's the Christmas season, I think a lot of us are hoping that the big red man here brings us a few extra games to stuff our stockings with, and there's nothing like what we get with our online subscriptions. Now, unfortunately, they were supposed to be announced today, but I believe they've been delayed, the PlayStation Plus games, so we'll give those to you next week. But what has been announced this week is what we're getting for Xbox Gold, as well as for the Switch Online downloadable service. Xbox's December games are going to be Cube 2, Never Alone, and the 360 ones, which are compatible with the Xbox One, Dragon Age 2 and Mercenaries Player or Destruction.
I think Dragon Age 2 is probably the winner there for me for Xbox.
Yeah. Bit disappointing given it is an Xbox 360 game.
Yes, but thankfully Xbox is backwards compatible.
Yes.
Unlike the PlayStation 4 at the moment.
Look, to be honest, I've always thought that the PlayStation Plus games offered a bit more than Xbox Gold, just because I think they've got a tendency of highlighting some really good indies as well. But we'll see what they have in store for us in December. And I just wanted to briefly mention it as well because, the Nintendo Switch now has an online option. You have to pay for it. It's $20.
Service.
Yeah, it's a service. You basically get what you paid for. But I actually really enjoy the NES app, I suppose, that you open up to essentially treat as a Netflix. And they've added 3 more games pretty much every single month.
The one thing I do love about that NES system that they've got is how fast it is to load up a game.
It's so fast. Everything about the Switch OS is, in my opinion, fantastic. It's so quick right across the board. Anytime I go back to the PlayStation, or particularly my Xbox One, I really do struggle.
All we need is that Netflix app, and I'll use it on my Apple TV.
All we need. But there are 3 new games coming from the NES, and they are The Adventures of Lolo.
What?
Okay. Wario's Woods and Ninja Gaiden, which if I remember correctly, is a tough game.
Yeah, I don't think I think I did play it. But didn't get very far and then gave up.
It has been a huge week. Let us know what you liked us discussing. Of course, it's a pleasure anytime you do join us. Make sure you head over to mustplay.net.au where Ryan Mason's recent review of Farming Simulator 19 is up on the website, as well as my review of Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. Absolutely have had a blast with that game. It's not perfect. It's not the big leap forward that we wanted, but it's good.
It's good.
It's a good play.
It's still nostalgic.
Yes, it's good. Thank you for joining us, Jules. It's always a pleasure. Back to episode 1, I feel like. Yeah. You know, when we were doing that just over Discord and just trying to work it out, or Skype or whatever it was.
Look how far we've come.
Hopefully next week, Meso is back in the chair. We might even have a 4th edition. Who knows? All that coming up on episode 23 of the Must Play podcast. Thank you again for joining us, and good night.